Hi everyone, welcome to the next video on my YouTube channel. My name is Saurabh Bharti, Microsoft Dynamics 365 professional. This is my YouTube channel where I come and share my knowledge and experience with you all. So without further delay, let's start today's topic. So today's video is about our functional consultant series which I have started, and this is the fifth video on this series. And we are talking about a requirement gathering process. So till now we have created 3 videos on the requirement gathering. I will put the link in the description box for the playlist. You can watch them. So let's start. What is there today and which specific phase of the requirement gathering process we are going to talk about. So if you remember, we have divided the requirement gathering process into different segments. Preparation for the requirement gathering, then gather and document the requirement, and then they sign off for the requirement from the business. Now, till now in the last 3 videos, we have covered the preparation part where we have spoken about that what are the key principles you need to remember for gathering requirements, preparing a questionnaire for your requirement gathering workshops or the interviews or the surveys. You need to have the workshop PowerPoint prepared for yourself when you go into the workshop. You need to have the business process catalog, which we have spoken about, which is available on Microsoft Learn portal and the GitHub, which you can download the standard business process catalog. You need to have the RTM template or the Azure DevOps configured for yourself. RTM is the requirement traceability matrix, that once you gather your requirement, how you are going to document them, what are the key fields you are going to capture out of your sessions. And then also we have spoken about, as a functional consultant, what are the basics of Azure DevOps. You need to understand what is Azure DevOps for a functional consultant. So we have spoken about all these things, and if you have not watched them, I'll put the link in the description. Go and watch them. So now today we are going to talk about the next phase of the requirement gathering process, which is we are going to cover the gather and the document both together in today's video. So let's talk about in gather and document what we are doing, what we are going to talk about. So when we are ready and when we have prepared for our requirement gathering sessions and the workshops or the phase, we need to understand that what are the different ways possible for gathering requirement and going to the customer and understand their requirement. So these are the four key methods which I have put here. There can be more, but majorly we do in this way. So let's say one is your requirement workshop. So you conduct your workshop with the stakeholders, the users, or the business. Then you also have, you do not want to have a bigger forum, so you do the interview with the key stakeholders. Sometimes you do not get the time or for the workshop from the users or the key stakeholders, so then you conduct a survey and then send them the questionnaires just to ask them to fill the details in that. And also one of the key analysis which we also do is the historical document analysis, which gives us the understanding about how their processes works, what are the pain points they are having, what documents and what sort of issues they are having, and how their business is, how their business works, right? So this historical documents may or may not be available with each and every customer, but if it is available, it is really helpful for us to understand their key requirements in this process. So the next thing is like these are the different ways through which you can conduct the requirement. Now the most important thing is that when we are going for the workshop, so let's understand about when we are conducting the workshop, the interviews with the key stakeholders. So what are the things which you need to do for that? So first thing is you need to identify the key stakeholder for each business area. This you can do with the business, the representative from the customer who is kind of a super user, or the manager who is managing this implementation from the customer side, and along with your project management team. You need to divide them into a focus group. So you cannot have the workshop for everyone together. So let's say you just want to have a workshop with the journal ledger group and accounts payable group separately, receivable group separately, the tax group separately. So you need to divide your key stakeholders into the focus group. You need to schedule the sessions well in advance, and all these session dates and the schedule should align with your project plan, the broader project plan which you have for this project or the implementation, because it has to meet your milestones and the deadlines which you have planned for the project. You need to plan the multiple sessions. You can plan in iteration 1, 2, and 3, because it is very much possible that when you talk first time to the customer or the users, you do not get the enough information, or if you get the information also, you need to go back and validate those requirements with your users and the key stakeholders. Okay. So, and then you share the questionnaire in well in advance, so that they can think about that what you are going to ask them, set up the context about the questionnaire and the process. Request for any historical document if it is available, so that you can understand their business process well in advance and get some information about the processes, the jargons or the terminologies which they use in their business. This will help you to connect better during the workshops when you are talking to the key stakeholders. Schedule one-to-one interviews generally with the middle or the top management to understand their need and the vision from this implementation. What do they actually want, right? Because at the end, most of the requirements are driven based on the vision that organization, top management, or the organization itself has. So conduct or schedule a few one-to-one interviews with these key stakeholders during this process. What should be your approach when you are getting into the workshop and when you have done all these things? So approach is very simple. Be a good listener, right? Because this is the time where you would like the key stakeholders to explain everything to you, and let them speak, let them explain each and everything which they have in their mind, the pain point, the processes, and everything. So few things you need to keep in mind always, like when you are talking about the workshop, so always be before the time for the workshop couple of minutes. Okay, don't be late. It didn't leave a good impression. Switch on the camera if online, if you are conducting an online workshop. Create online OneNote taking minutes from the workshop. I'll show you how you can create that in the later part. Introduce yourself and initiate the conversation. Don't let that awkward silence when you join the meeting, that everyone is on mute, no one is talking about anything. So if you are leading the workshop, so let's start the conversation. Let's start with your quick introduction. And when you do the workshop, right, so at that point of time, share your workshop PowerPoint which you have prepared as a prerequisite before the requirement gathering process. Set up the context, agenda, and the expectation from these workshops, like why we are doing, why this implementation is going on, what you are going to transform, what's the agenda for this specific workshop, right? And what are the expectations from these key stakeholders, so that they can feel that they are going to contribute to this, right? A quick introduction about everyone to understand everyone's roles and responsibilities, so that they feel like they are important for this workshop and they are going to contribute. Explain the rules for the workshop. So for example, if you are going to have a question answer way, or if you are going to have open-ended questions or group discussion kind of a thing, and anything, so or be on time, time limitations, parking lot, be specific to the topic which we are discussing in this workshop. So explain all the rules which you would like to explain them to have the effective and efficient workshop process for that day. And also avoid conflict during the workshop with the key stakeholders. So if you see like there is because it happens, it is very normal that when you talk to them, there are a lot of conflicts which will arise during the requirement gathering. So avoid those. If the user is explaining something which you do not agree, or you have a conflict about the in terms of the product plan or the program you are delivering, document it and provide that information to the person who is representing the customer, and that person's responsibility is to resolve those conflicts with the user, right? So do not get into the argument or the conflict during the workshop process. So now once you understand these things, these are the things which you can keep in mind, and the approach which you can have it. Now by now you have all the material for conducting your workshops and the interview. You know the thumb rules, how to behave, how to execute. So you know all these things, so you are prepared for the workshop. So when you get into the workshop, like, how do you gather the requirements? So ultimately the objective of these sessions are to gather a clear requirement from the business and articulate them and document them, so that these requirements can feed into a robust solution for the customer. So for that, what you need to understand, that what are the key drivers when you talk about any requirement to the key stakeholder. So basically you can follow a thumb rule of who, what, why. Okay, so if a customer is explaining some requirement or business process to you, so you need to very much clear about that who needs that requirement. Okay, so for example, is it the finance manager, sales manager, or tax controller? Who needs that requirement, right? What the customer needs. Now then, what is the exact requirement? So I would like to approve this document in the system, right, and I want to approve this using the email notification or anything. So what the customer needs, right? What they are going to solve using this requirement, how it is going to impact their business, and why the customer does and what they do it, right? So these are the very, very, very important questions which you need to ask, or you need to make sure that your discussions helps you to derive all these questions, that who, what, and why for any requirement you are talking to the customer. Okay. Now, when you are asking this question on who, what, why, then you also need to think that when you are going to document them, the requirements for your solution, what are the major key parameters you require or you need to collect during these discussions, right? So you need to very much understand that if there is a requirement discussion you are doing, then what is the applicable business process, right? What is the category of the requirement? Is it it is a feature, report, workflow, interface, function, or what exactly is the requirement? What is the category of the requirement? And also you need to prioritize your requirement. Ask them, understand the need of those need of that particular requirement, understand in terms of the impact on their business, how it is going to impact. So because when you plan for an implementation, you work for a transformation program, you need to identify your minimum viable product, which is minimum required for your go live. So identify. So there can be a requirement which is not so critical, which can be done post go live or in the next phase, but there can be requirements which are minimum viable, which are most critical, and it is a must to have. Okay. You also need to understand that the type of a requirement, a functional and non-functional. I'm going to give you the example that what's the functional requirement looks like and how non-functional requirement looks like. You need to have the MOSCO identify, the must have, should have, could have, won't have, right? So document everything and try to talk to the business or the key stakeholders when you are having these discussions, that is it a must have, is it a should have, it is a could have requirement. Understand their pain points, the roles and responsibilities about every requirement. Who is doing that? Is it a manager, clerk, controller or who is doing this particular activity or who needs that requirement. What's the acceptance criteria? Try to understand the clear cut acceptance criteria, and then also don't forget to capture the exceptions for your requirement. So after you understand that, what questions, like what are the key, I mean, the way you need to ask the requirement, the question to your stakeholder, you also need to understand the key parameters on which you are going to document or evaluate your requirements. So it is very important you keep all these things in mind, and while discussing with your key stakeholders. Now, how do you ask the question? Now, to like who, what, why, these key parameters, but how do you ask these things? So always start with the open-ended questions. So begin by asking open-ended questions to encourage stakeholders to freely express their need, challenges, and expectations without the constraint. So if you ask a very close yes or no, they might not be able to explain each and everything which they are currently facing, right? Focus on the business processes, right? So tailor the question to focus on a specific business process or workflow or the pain point that the ERP system will address. So for example, can you walk me through your current process for the supplier invoice against the purchase order? What are the major points you encounter while recording the supplier invoice? Is it a three-way matching, or is it a volume of the invoice which you receive, right? Then probe for the details, like ask follow-up questions to delve deeper into stakeholders' responses and uncover underlying requirement or nuances. For example, can you provide me an example when you have a deviation in your purchase order and the invoice submitted by the supplier? What do you do? How you resolve that exception? What are the key factors that contribute to a specific challenge, like when you have a huge volume of the supplier invoices, right? So what are the key factors you contribute to this? And also then you ask about the clarity of the roles and responsibilities, that understanding that who are the primary users of this particular process which you are going to perform, what are the tasks or activities typically performed. So you have to ask all these questions in a way that you get the answer, and users and the key stakeholders are very comfortable when they are talking about their requirement. Discuss the user experience and the training. So most of the times they have the business process, it is working fine, but it is lacking in a user experience which they are having in their current system, or the user training which they have not got. The system supports the specific feature or functionality, but because of the lack of training, they are not able to utilize that functionality. Also about that reporting and analytics. So your questions should be in a way that you get as much as information you as much as information you can gather based on the key parameters for the documentations, plus like who, what, and why, right? So your question should derive really your key parameters for the documentation, and who, what, and why for any requirement. Okay, so now let's understand with one example, and this example I have taken from the Microsoft Learn. So just to tell you, like most of the content which I create, I read on Microsoft Learn. Like everything is available. I'm just trying to summarize for you, and all these things are available in your Success by Design or Microsoft Learn, different courses which we have. So for example, to understand this, like let's say the user says we need to print reports for all expired transaction in last 30 days. Now it is a very vague requirement. Now first thing you should ask that, okay, who uses the report? So then user will say that it is used by the manager. So you know the who is doing this, right? Now manager, how do you use the report? Does it have to be report, or is the real ask simply to see the expired transaction for the last month? right? So then the users or the manager will say that because now you have identified that the user is the manager, like you have identified who, right? Now we only look at the report once a month, so that we would be fine, right? So which means now you have identified a what, right? So what is required. So then manager, like then you can ask that what do you look for when you review the data, right? So why you are doing this, right? So we look for a transaction that was over $50,000, and then we do a deeper review of those things. So now you ask who, what, and then why you do it. So then manager, then you say that, okay, so if we give you the report or the transactions with over $50,000 for you from the system, will it be fine? So then you say, then the manager say, yes, it will be fine. So then your final requirement when you are going to articulate is going to be the manager needs to review expired transaction over $50,000 monthly. Now this requirement explains who need this, what is required, and why it is required. Okay, so I hope this explains very clearly. Let's look at a few more example. Now we talked about the functional and the non-functional requirement. So as a functional requirement, few examples are like, as a sales user, okay, so you define who, I need to be able to close an opportunity as lost and then capture why it was lost, so that we can improve our sales tactics in the future. So it explains like what, right? So who, sales user, what is required, I need to be able to close the opportunity as lost, and so that explains that what is required, and then why it is required, because then capture why it was lost, so that we can improve the sales tactics in the future. So this is a good example for your requirement. And then you have few more. As a sales manager, I need to be able to approve discounts on the quote, so that I can reduce the total price and give a discount to the customer. So it kind of answers your who, what, and why criteria for each and every requirement. But what are the bad examples you have? Let's say for first one, opportunities can be won or lost. I just say that. But why? Who will do that? Okay. What is exactly required? Price should reflect the discount, but who will give the discount? Why it is required, right? What is required? What discount is required? So you need to be very careful about when you are framing your requirements. It should really answer your key fundamental questions which you have in your mind. Okay. Now let's look at some non-functional requirement. Non-functional requirements are the requirement which is not directly impacting the key the key features and the functionalities, right? But it is more about the performance and other aspect of the system. So few requirements like the non-functional requirement, the example are average screen load time for the internal users that are not mobile will be less than 3 seconds. Explains that, right, clearly. External portal must be able to handle 100 concurrent users who are performing case submission. But what are the bad examples of this? All screens in the app should load as fast as possible. It doesn't say that how fast, right? External portal must be able to handle a peak traffic. What is the peak traffic? Is it 100 users, 1000 users, 10,000 users, million users, right? So you need to be very, very specific about when you are framing your requirement and discussing your requirement with your key stakeholders. So I hope these 3 different examples of the conversation with your users, the example of the functional requirement framing, and the non-functional requirement framing is clear for you, right? Now, based on these conversations and everything, you would have a lot of information. Now you need to document this information. So how are you going to document this information? Okay, what are the key tools and the techniques you will use to document all this information which you have collected? So in my opinion, there are 3 things which you could do, right? First thing is capture all the details in Azure DevOps or the template. Let's say if you are not using the Azure DevOps, you have got RTM template, requirement traceability matrix template, then you have to capture all this information. So capture all the details about what exactly is the requirement, who needs this, why it is required, the acceptance criteria, the priority, the Moscow, the feature, the type of categorization of the requirement. So anything which you have gathered, right, you need to document that in your Azure DevOps or the RTM. And that is why it is very important that we understand that how the Azure DevOps works for a functional consultant, how we should use it. Another key important thing which you should remember while documentation, you should link that requirement to the relevant business process. If you leave that requirement standalone, isolated, you won't know that which business process is going to use that particular requirement. So you need to explain that, okay, this belongs to the supplier invoice or supplier payment or the customer invoice or journal ledger or fixed asset process or procurement process, which process this particular requirement belongs to. So that's the documentation of your information which you have captured for the requirements which you have gathered. You also need to capture the minutes from the workshop, and you should share this with all the attendees who attended the workshop, just to give them the confidence that what they explained, you have captured them and you are going to frame them and articulate them in a better document in Azure DevOps or the RTM or whichever the method you are going to use for documentation. And for capturing the minutes for the efficiency, so many times I have seen that a lot of people use their personal notebook, pen, paper for capturing the notes and everything. So if there are 5 different people joining the workshop, everyone has its own notebook, and then later on everyone forgets to put that in a collaborative approach or at a one place. So you miss out most of the points which you have discussed, right? So it is very important you use some collaborative approach so that everyone can put their notes at a single point. So I'm going to show you, like, you can use the online Microsoft OneNote where you can create some pages or the note space and then share online with everyone with the meetings and the workshop, and then everyone can put their notes at a single place. Okay, so now let's go back to let's see 2 examples of this OneNote and also the Azure DevOps, that how you capture the requirement in DevOps and how you can write those things, and then we come back here and talk about the finalization of the requirement. So let's talk about something which is your OneNote. So this is your normal OneNote you all possibly are using. You can just create a one section here. Let's say it's a Dynamics class implementation requirement gathering. Then you can group them by finance workshop and then put our notes like GL workshop, AP workshop and everything. And now since it is a online OneNote, you just share the link of this with all the key stakeholders before the workshop or your team member, and they can start putting the information here. So after the workshop, you need not to go back to the people, reach out to them that how do I get your notes and things. You can have the collaborative approach. And also you have got an option here which you can use, that you can use the insert, go to insert and meeting details. So if you have scheduled a meeting with your for this workshop and it is an Outlook meeting, you can fetch that meeting here, and that meeting will fetch the agenda available in that meeting, the attendees available in that meeting. So you get all the information about the session which has been scheduled there. Apart from that, let's look at the Azure DevOps as well. So this is your Azure DevOps screen. I have just captured this requirement. I've just, for a sample, I do not have all the fields which are required or which we have spoken. And as we discussed in the previous session, like you can get those fields configured in the Azure DevOps by the DevOps admin. But for example, this is where you go and create your requirement. So there is a type requirement. You enter the requirement description, like the title, like manager needs to review the expired transaction over $50,000. Try to put all the information about who, what, why they need it, or the prioritization of this, the sizing if you are having the categorization of the requirement. So all these details you should enter in this. And most importantly, as I said, do not forget to link this with a relevant process. So you can just click on the add link here, click on the let's say existing, like if you have, so this is where your business process catalog is very important, that you have loaded that particular catalog beforehand, so that you can link your requirement with the relevant business process. So you select this, and then maybe that process can be your parent child relation. So let's say if I select as a parent, and it should be review the transaction. So I'm having this thing, like let's say it is, I'm just selecting randomly, so let's say a review and approval process for request for quotation, and that can become your parent of this requirement. So it is very important that you define or map your requirement to the relevant business process. So this is how you can document and have the minutes captured for your workshop. Now let's go back to the PowerPoint, and talk about that. How do you finalize your requirement? How do you know that the data which you have, or the requirement which you have collected, are final or confirmed? So we are going to talk about this more in the sign off process, where we are going to talk about how do you go back and validate the requirement with the business, and also take the confirmation. So but a few of the questions before you finalize the requirement, you need to ask yourself, like, are the requirements complete? Who needs the requirement? Why do they need them? So the fundamental question which we have discussed in the beginning: is the estimate adequate? So you have the right, like, did details change, or any revised requirement is there? Is the priority correct? Like, is it a MVP, or Moscow is defined correctly? Is everything is in scope for us? Have the requirement mapped to the business objective, right? And have the stakeholder reached an agreement on the plan? So this is what we are going to talk about in sign off. And does a roadmap to the next iteration actions? Like, how do you take these requirements for the next iteration or the next step? Okay. So that's it for this blog. That's it for this video. Hope this video explains you and help you in understanding for executing the workshop, for your requirement gathering, the preparation for the requirement gathering, how you should ask question, how you should frame them, what are the key parameters you need to have for your requirement gathering. I hope all these things are explained in this video. If you like my video, please share, subscribe, like, and put in the comment box if you need more information, if you have suggestion for me. The next video I'm going to talk about is the sign off process for the requirement, that how do you sign off or finalize the requirement which we are just now talking. That's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed watching this, and see you in the next one. Thank you.